Welcome in, fellow bedrotters. Hello, welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 2. Feel like trash, but we here. That is the vibe of the podcast. Is do we all feel like shit? Yes, we do. And this is the space where we are allowed to just express ourselves and acknowledge that we do feel like shit. This is our certified rot spot. So, get cozy. My symptoms are like pretty bad today, especially like my fatigue is making me already just like feel so out of breath. So I apologize, even though I know I don't have to, because this is the space where like we're just being real. But I do apologize if today I pause a lot or like you hear me just like sigh with like a big breath or something, because like I am feeling pretty fatigued and out of breath by little things today. Well, welcome to the podcast. For anyone who is new to this, my name is Punkster. I am a chronically ill and disabled Dead by Daylight and horror content creator here on Twitch. And I also have YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, Twitter, basically any social media that you can think of. I'm on it, so if you want to go check me out there, you can. But I also do a lot of invisible illness and disability awareness here on Twitch, as well as my other social media platforms. And this is a podcast where we discuss the realities of living with invisible illnesses and disabilities through covering various topics. And today's topic, we're going to be discussing the impacts of living in survival mode. I would say I've been in survival mode for probably the last 3 years specifically. I started getting this sick when at 5 years, but like it feels like the last 3 years has been like full on survival. If you have ever felt like you're running on empty just trying to get through the day, you are not alone. And for those with chronic conditions, this feeling isn't occasional, it's a way of life, and is often something that we deal with on a daily basis. I feel like for a lot of us, if you're still going through the diagnosis process and you haven't been diagnosed yet and there's no treatment, you're not getting any treatment, like that's like, I feel like a really low level for survival mode. Like that's like an all-time low where like you have no idea what's going on, or you do know what's going on, but like no doctors are believing you. All your tests are coming back normal and you are seeing this regression, but you're not getting any help. So you're just like in full survival mode when you're in these circumstances, for sure. But even people who are diagnosed and are getting treatment, a big misconception is that if you're getting treated, you are getting cured. And that is definitely not the case whatsoever. If anything, there are plenty of people who get treatment and then the treatment doesn't work. And then so they have to try something else. And so you're trying all of these things and, you might be improving in one way, but then like you're getting side effects and stuff. And so there's a different level of survival mode there where you do have a diagnosis and you are getting treatment, but like there's so many other things that are tearing you apart and like affecting your life and affecting your illness in so many different ways, no matter if you're getting treatments or not. And the thing with some treatments too is some treatments are treating the disease but are actually giving you so many side effects that makes you feel worse and like your quality of life is worse. So like it's helping your illness not progress, but your quality of life is worse because of all the side effects. So there are definitely different versions of survival mode, but at the end of the day, like survival mode as a whole, in any way, shape, or form that you are dealing with it, is so harmful, and people really do not see that a lot of us are in survival mode and they don't understand how it can impact your day-to-day living. What does it mean to live in survival mode? For people with invisible illnesses or disabilities, survival mode can look like pushing through constant pain, navigating overwhelming fatigue, calling myself out here, or managing the mental strain of symptoms others can't see. Living in survival mode isn't just about physical endurance, it's emotional too. You're constantly trying to impossibly balance what needs to get done right now, what can be put off, and what simply has to fall away. And it's absolutely exhausting. So, examples of living in survival mode can be forcing yourself through work only to collapse at home with no energy for your personal life. And I feel like that is an example that so many people deal with, especially people who unfortunately have to get up and go to work despite how they're feeling. Ignoring small joys because all your energy is spent managing symptoms. Feeling like your world is shrinking as you focus solely on survival, leaving little room for growth or connection. So for me personally, living in survival mode means a few different things. I've definitely experienced that list. And I know that I don't necessarily work. I don't have like a 9 to 5 job. But obviously I'm a human being and I have bills I have to pay. I have to pay for groceries just like everyone else, So there are times where I am literally trading my quality of life for financial security. And what I mean by that is I am pushing myself to the point of putting myself physically in a very dangerous position with my health, all for the sake of financial security. That is something that I do all the time. And that is a result of being in survival mode. You're dealing with so many symptoms that impact you on a daily basis, yet the world keeps turning and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And so you just kind of have to suppress everything that you're feeling just to try and pay your bills. And a lot of us have to deal with that. And people don't see how unhealthy that can be for a lot of us. If you're pushing yourself to the point where there's irreversible damage to your health just to pay the bills, that it just angers me that we live in a world where like that's the case. There are so many people who are getting like denied disability benefits, and then they are pushing themselves to a poor quality of life, and they are pushing themselves to the point where their illness is getting worse, just to try to put food on the table. For healthy abled people, they can push through that. With them, they can agree with the thought of, oh, it's mind over matter. You just got to keep working hard and push through those battles. And, that's very toxic positivity, but it works for healthy people. That does not work with disabled or invisibly ill people. We can't just simply push through, because when we do, it comes at a cost. And for me specifically, I'll talk about my circumstances, living with a complex illness like chronic fatigue syndrome. Every time I push myself to the point of a crash, I am regressing my illness. I'm putting myself into a place where I am actually getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Another thing that I personally struggle with when living in survival mode these last few years is like the fact that I feel like I'm not truly living my life. I feel like I am in the passenger seat of my own life. It just feels like I'm sitting here and I have no control over where I'm going. And it feels like life is constantly just like pressing the brakes. And I'm like, I just want to move forward. I just want to go where I need to go. And it keeps telling me that I can't. It keeps pressing the brakes. And then I'm seeing all these other cars going by. And that is everyone else's lives where they're just speeding past me, going where they need to go. And it's the hardest part is because like it's a lack of presence. I feel a lack of presence in my own life. I feel numb most of the time. And like even right now, as I'm speaking to you guys, I don't feel anything. My symptoms are so debilitating, and my chronic fatigue specifically is so bad where like I don't even feel like I'm in my own body. I don't know if anyone else here experiences that, but that's exactly how I feel. I am so out of touch with my own reality because I am just in full on like fight or flight survival mode with my illness, just so consumed by the symptoms that I struggle with that I don't even feel like I'm in my own body. I don't feel present. I don't feel present at all. It feels like a blur. My whole life feels like a blur. No, exactly. It's like I'm not participating in my own life. Yeah, like I'm sitting here and I'm having a conversation with you guys, and I'm doing a podcast, like I'm doing something that I enjoy, but most of the time, because my symptoms are so bad, I get no joy out of it. I don't feel joy because I'm so tired. And that's another thing with survival mode too, is when you're in survival mode, your feelings are like suppressed. Like I'm not feeling joy because I'm so tired. Something might anger me. Like I might be put in a position where something upsets me and I'm almost too tired to care. Like something where I'm like, oh, I should stand up for myself, or oh, I should say this, and I'm like, it's not worth it. I'm too tired. I'm too tired to feel sad sometimes. Sometimes I'm literally like, I know I should be crying about something, and my fatigue is so bad that I can't feel anything at all. I don't feel anything. It's very rare where I am actually allowed to feel something. And like, again, that's another layer of survival mode, is like genuinely not being able to feel your feelings, so your mental health gets worse because you're not able to tap into those feelings that you should be feeling so that you can let them go in a healthy way. And that's why with me, a lot of the time, I definitely very much struggle with depression because of my circumstances. I would say it's like high functioning. Like it's not like it on the surface like bothers me every day, but because I'm in the state of survival mode and I suppress those feelings because of me trying to just survive every day, it inevitably gets to a point where those feelings boil over and I just break down. And if I wasn't in survival mode and I was able to feel those things when I needed to feel those things, I definitely wouldn't blow up as much. I definitely wouldn't just like have this day of like full depression, breaking down, and all of the thoughts racing, and like all of those thoughts that I had been feeling for such a long time that I've had to suppress, like boils up. Like that wouldn't happen if I wasn't stuck in the state of survival because of the symptoms that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Like my chronic fatigue is so bad where like I'm too tired to explain myself to people. Which sometimes, like if anything, what it's taught me is like, I shouldn't have to explain myself to people. So in a weird way, like I've learned something good from it. And actually, funny enough, I say this to Mr. Punkster all the time. Like me becoming homebound has actually taught me that nothing fucking matters. And the things that used to make me anxious, like out in life, like I used to have really bad anxiety. Like I would get so anxious about certain things, like in social settings, and being homebound and like losing everything that made up my life taught me that nothing fucking matters and life is so short. And so like I just don't give a shit anymore. So like in a weird way, I've definitely grown from this experience. But again, like nobody asks for this, and quite frankly, people should be able to learn those things without getting sick. So like I'm not going to thank my illness for that whatsoever. Let's get into the pillars of survival mode, how survival mode can impact our quality of life. So one of them is obviously our physical health, which we were just talking about. Survival mode can worsen existing symptoms. Chronic stress heightens inflammation, reduces your body's ability to heal, and can lead to new health problems. For someone with an invisible illness or disability, this creates a vicious cycle. This is why it can be such a huge problem for people who are applying for disability, because the whole reason the disability benefits even exist is because people want a better quality of life. And in order to get, we talked about this last episode, where our quality of life is hidden behind a paywall. This is what I mean. We can't get a better quality of life if we are living our lives and working ourselves as hard as abled, healthy individuals. So when we're working that hard and we inevitably get into the state of survival mode, our symptoms are going to worsen. Our health is going to worsen because we are literally suppressing everything that we're feeling physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, in every way, shape, or form. We are suppressing everything that is making up our lives because of our illnesses to try and live up to the standard of a healthy, abled person. And when we do that, it's going to, again, it's this vicious cycle. And I can honestly say that this is a cycle that I'm in right now, where I see my symptoms getting worse, but I have to pay the bills and I still have to do what I need to do. So I suppress that, and then I do what I need to do. And then because I'm in survival mode, I get stressed out, and then my health gets worse. And it's just this never-ending cycle of things affecting one another, and overall just making your quality of life worse. I'm just gonna take a minute to breathe because my fatigue's making it kind of hard right now. And that's okay, because this is the space. We are allowed to feel like shit. We just accept that this is what it is right now. Yeah, I didn't sleep the greatest last night, so when that happens, my POTS actually tends to flare up more, which my POTS affects my chronic fatigue, and my chronic fatigue affects my POTS. It all goes together, so my heart rate goes up and it's hard to breathe. Obviously, the second pillar is mental health. When you're constantly in a state of urgency, your mind doesn't have the space to process emotions or feel safe. This can lead to heightened anxiety, depression, or a sense of burnout. The mental load of balancing symptoms with life's demands can feel overwhelming, which we also did just kind of talk about how we are trying to live up to able-bodied, healthy people's standards in terms of way of living. Trying to balance this not only affects our physical health, but it can affect our mental health as well. Because, yeah, you don't feel much because of you being in survival mode and everything kind of feeling numbed and suppressed. You don't even have the space to process your emotions in a healthy way. And you also don't even feel safe anymore. You don't feel safe in your own body. You don't feel safe out in the world anymore. And there's just so many factors and how it affects every little part of your life, that everything is stressful. The second you get this sick, that's just, honestly, that's like the bare, oh God, what did I just say? Oh God. Oh no. Oh no. I swear this is gonna happen at least once an episode. Thought train has left the station. I don't know if anyone else with brain fog, feels it like this, where you can almost, physically see the words in your brain, and then it's just poof, it's like a cloud. It just disappears, and then you're literally sitting here trying to think, and it's just empty. Everything is just empty. That's literally what it feels like. It's I saw the words as I was saying them, and then they just poof, it's gone. So the third one, and I feel like this is honestly a really big one, the third pillar of the impacts of survival mode is relationships and social life. Living in survival mode often means withdrawing from social connections. You might feel guilty for canceling plans or not having the energy to engage with loved ones. Over time, this can lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. When you're in survival mode, you say no to everything because you know what's at stake. You know that the second you do something that isn't on your list of need to do's, that very minimal, I won't even say it's a balance, because I feel like it's really hard to have any sort of balance in your life when you live with an invisible illness or disability, but I would say that the second you go to do something you want to do, hang out with a friend, that balance, I know it's not balance, but that balance that you have in your life of keeping up with those things just falls to the other end of the scale. You lose that balance entirely. So when you know what's at stake and how certain things like that are going to impact the rest of your daily living and impact the things that you need to do, I'm gonna flare, and then I'm gonna flare for a few days, and then I'm gonna fall behind on this, and it's a cycle of you just end up, it's not even a cycle, it's a domino effect of you starting to fall behind on things, and then that's even more stressful, and then again, that stress is going to make you flare up, and then you're going to be even more in a state of survival mode. So it sucks, because when you're in this state, you say no to everything. Anything you want to do, it goes out the window. I know for me personally, over the last 3 years of living like this and being on survival mode nonstop, I say no to almost everything. And it's not because I don't want to do those things. It's because if I do those things, everything in my life is going to fall apart, and then I'm going to struggle even more. And it sucks because a large part of like living a happy, healthy life is connections and building relationships with people and laughing with people and having heart to hearts with people. Like, connection is so important. And so a lot of us who are invisibly ill and disabled and we're in survival mode and not being able to hang out with people and becoming isolated because of it. That's also what contributes to our depression, is because we don't get to experience that whatsoever. The thing that I struggle most with when being in like a social setting is feeling like I have nothing to talk about with people. So for example, like if I'm at Mr. Punkster's birthday party with all of his friends. They're all talking about, how's work? What have you been up to in life? And they're saying, oh, like work's good. I'm making X amount of dollars, and like they've built, all of these people have built their lives. And I feel like that's something that a lot of us who are invisibly ill and disabled, we struggle with, feeling like we can build the lives that we want to build because we have to say no to so much, because we had to say goodbye to the things that we really wanted to do. Yeah, that the thing that I struggle with the most is I get myself into this sort of situation, and then even in that moment, I'm in survival mode, obviously. So not only am I already feeling numb to everything around me and feeling like I can't relate to anything around me, but all of these people are talking about how great their lives are, and obviously nobody's life is perfect, but, they have the control to build the lives that they want to build because they're healthy and abled and they have a choice. But when we're in survival mode, we don't have a choice. We have no choice in how we want to build our lives, how we want to spend our time, and everything in between, because our energy is so limited. But yes, like being in social settings is honestly so hard for me because I feel like I can't relate to anyone around me. I feel like I don't have enough to talk about because it's like, oh, like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I spend most of my time in bed. Like, that's not very exciting. Like, it's not good, engaging conversation. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yeah, I spend a lot of time in bed and, I watch this TV show and, like, you can make small talk still. But, when people are literally trying to, like, check in with one another and they're talking about all of these things that they're doing, like, it just makes you feel so bad because it feels like it's literally a reminder that you can't do all the things that you wanted to do. And that is kind of a good segue into the last pillar here, which is your loss of identity. When survival becomes the goal, it's easy to lose sight of who you are outside of your illness or disability. Passions, hobbies, and dreams might feel unattainable. And that's the hard reality that we do have to face. I personally have spoken about this plenty of times. I entirely lost who I was when I started getting sick. And even slowly to this day, I'm still losing little parts of me every month, I feel like, at this point. Like every month that goes by, it feels like I'm losing a little bit more of who I am. But more specifically, when I first started getting sick, and I was realizing that I have all these new limitations. Because of these new limitations, all of the things that I had originally dreamt I would do and how I was going to build my life just were entirely unattainable now. So, and because of those things, I felt that loss of identity, because those goals that I had and those things that I used to do was what made up who I am, or rather who I was. So I had to entirely rebuild who I was. I had to say goodbye to all of the things that made up who I was before, all of the things that I liked to do, all of the things that I wanted to do with my future. And I had to suddenly build my life around this thing, around this illness, around these new limitations. Like, as I said before, like, you lose the power of choice. You lose the power to choose how you want to spend your time and how you want your future to look, because suddenly you don't have a bunch of options. So you have half the options that you had that you want to do are all gone. They just disappear right in front of you in the blink of an eye. So I had to entirely rethink how I wanted to spend my time, what I wanted my future to look like. To this day, I don't even know what my future is going to look like. And that's something else that happens in survival mode is I feel like a lot of us don't even want to think about the future, quite frankly, because we know how quickly things can change for us. So it's hard to imagine a future when you really don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow with new limitations. And suddenly the thing that you found you were able to do, you're not able to do anymore. So for me personally, I can't even think of like a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. Like I can't think about what my future is going to look like at all because I honestly don't know what's going to happen. So it's just this weird contrast because survival mode inherently makes you lose the sense of presence in your life. I also can't think about your future. So you can't feel present. You can't think about your future because you don't know what your future is going to look like because your body is so unpredictable. So like, where does that leave you? You know, we end up just kind of floating around, and that's kind of how I've explained to other people close to me in my life, like that's kind of my way of living right now. Is it's very much I'm floating, I'm going with the flow because like I don't have any plans. I have had no planning done whatsoever for my life because I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. Yeah, it's really hard because you do lose yourself because of all of this, but you also are too afraid to plan for the future, and you also lack that presence in your life. So you just lose so much of what makes up who you are. You lose so much of, you know, like it's almost like you're losing hope, because the thing that keeps people going and the thing that you know, keeps people pushing for the future is a hope for that someday they'll make it, that someday they'll get to that goal that they wanted to get to. And I feel like a lot of us, because we don't have a lot of goals, because we really don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, yeah, I don't know, I just feel like a lot of us don't feel really anything at all. That sounds really sad. I'm sorry, that does sound really sad, but like I don't know, I feel like that's kind of the truth of it, is we're all kind of struggling. And like, again, this is me speaking on survival mode, not people being invisibly ill and disabled as a whole, because I know that there are people who are invisibly ill and disabled who have been able to build their futures and stuff, because it really does depend on your quality of life. You know, that's kind of like the biggest thing, is like this whole conversation is very dependent on your quality of life, and being in survival mode is obviously like a lower quality of life for sure. You're literally just thinking about how you're gonna get to the next minute, the next second, the next hour, getting through the next hour. Like, oh, okay, like I just need to make it till this. Like the whole time you're in your own head being like, it's okay, I just have to get through the next hour. As long as I get to here, I'll be okay. Like you're talking to yourself the whole time. So that's also something that pulls you out of being present, is you're in your head the whole time, just trying to survive. I never even thought of it like that, but whenever those conversations came up, I always felt uneasy. Being put in those social situations, like I would be talking to someone and I would be hearing them talk about their lives, and I would be like, why do I feel so icky right now? Like I should be happy for them, you know? And like obviously you are happy for them. Like you're happy that they're happy. I of course I want everyone to be happy, you know, but you can't help but feel jealous and icky, because you're like, wow, it must be so nice to have a choice in what you do and how you live your life and not have anything holding you back, you know? Because a lot of us can be held back by our limitations and everything. And like I said before, like we lose the power to choose how we spend our days. And that is like such a hard way to live, feeling like you have to hold yourself back, not even just in terms of your goals, but like in terms of how you want to spend your time. And like having the choice to hang out with friends and be around people that you love, like, and having to hold yourself back in that way, that's what leads to isolation. Holding yourself back due to being in survival mode, in terms of your goals, having to hold yourself back in terms of your goals leads to depression. Like, everything is intertwined. Everything is connected when you live in survival mode. It truly impacts every single aspect of your life. You know, having to say goodbye to your passions, having to say goodbye to all your hobbies or the dreams that you had. And, you know, there's just so much that can make up someone's identity that when you become invisibly ill or disabled, those things that made up who you were, you don't have access to anymore, or just aren't attainable whatsoever. So you're left being like, well, who am I then? When I first started getting sick, or rather before I started getting sick, I was someone who went on hikes. I would go on 4-hour hikes. I would go to the gym on top of that. I was working a full-time job as a housekeeper. So I was also doing manual labor on top of working out and going hiking. I was a very active person. So that's what made up my identity, was I was a very active person. I was also a writer. I built up a lot of my identity around my passion, and my goals of becoming a writer. And I was a writer, but I also wanted to like write novels and stuff. I was a mental health writer, which it's funny because it kind of makes sense that I ended up, sorry if I hit my mic. It makes sense that I kind of ended up doing something like this, because one thing that's always made up who I am that I haven't had to say goodbye to is just being someone who wants to help people in any way, shape, or form, like help people feel less alone. But before, it looked very different. I was doing it through writing. And now, since I got sick, because I have cognitive problems now, I can't write the same way that I used to. I used to be able to string along words so beautifully. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything like that, but genuinely, like, everything that I wrote came to me so quickly, and I would read it and I would feel very proud of it. And I would feel like it would make a lot of sense. And then I would post it for other people to read, and I would have other people coming in and like talking to me or sending me a message being like, hey, this really helped me through a hard time. And I was really proud of my writing, and I had so many dreams that I had for that. And you know, I loved hiking, and I purposely moved to Alberta so I could hike near the mountains. And that's how I've envisioned my life, was living in that sort of environment and doing all of those things. And then I got sick and I couldn't go for hikes anymore. I had to move from Alberta. I had to leave the mountains behind, and I had to come back home. And then slowly I lost my ability to write. And so when I lost all of that, I had to sit with myself, and I was like, well, who am I now? I don't know who I am, because all of the things that I like to do, I can't do anymore. And so that inevitably leads to depression and a lot of other mental health problems, because you're just questioning what to do in life. You're questioning, like, why am I even here? You know, like, I am very much someone who likes to live with a sense of purpose, and it felt like my purpose got taken away from me. And so I was like, what's the point? What's the point of being here? What's the point of, trying anything? Because I feel like I'm going to be useless now. I feel like there's nothing to me. I feel like I don't know who I am, and I don't think I'm ever going to be another version of myself that I'm happy with. I felt like I would be settling, you know? And in a way you are, because you're never going to fully let go of the things that you want to do. I'm always going to miss the version of me who was a beautiful writer. I'm always going to miss the version of me that, loved hiking and nature and stuff. But the beautiful thing about life too is that whether you're healthy or you're not, we're always going to shed out of and cozy ourselves into different versions of ourselves. The beautiful thing about life is you're constantly growing, you're constantly changing. So, losing yourself is still hard. Losing your identity is still hard. And you're always going to grieve that person, no matter what. you might have days where you feel like you've accepted it, but you're also going to have days where everything comes crumbling down again and you're full on grieving that person that you were. But because of us as human beings, and we have that ability to change and grow, we do have the ability to reinvent ourselves, and it doesn't make grieving any easier. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you guys that, like, I'm not trying to spew toxic positivity. I'm not trying to tell you guys that it gets easier. It's never going to get easier. But you really can find something to hold on to make life feel a little sparkly. My life feels numb most of the time, but streaming is the one thing that when I can pull myself out of survival mode for even a split second, it's the thing that makes my life sparkly. And I hold on to that for dear life. So I did inevitably, after grieving for probably years and having to sit with myself and rethink about my possibilities and, what I think I could do with myself, I did end up rebuilding my life. It's possible, and like I said before, it doesn't make grieving any easier because you are always going to grieve your pre-sick self, but you can rebuild your life. It is possible, and there's gonna be something out there, even if it's one small thing. There will be something that leaves you excited about life, even if it's just, music. Something that I hold on to very close to my heart is like my favorite bands. They get me through some of the hardest moments of my life, and music makes me really happy, and I get really like giddy and excited when my favorite songs come on. So even though that's something really, really minuscule, you have to hang on to it for dear life, because in a life where we're in survival mode all the time and we don't really feel much of anything, if you can find one thing that makes you happy and hold on to that, you really have to hold on to it, because that's what makes life worth pushing through, and it gives you hope, even just for a split moment, it makes you feel hopeful again. So for me, that's music, that's doing streaming, and that's being here with you guys. Like it's doing this. Like this makes me believe that there is a life outside of dealing with all this shit. If you are feeling right now like you've lost yourself, if you just recently got sick and you're struggling with your loss of identity, or you've been dealing with it for a long time and you're in the process right now of figuring out a new way of living with your new limitations, just a lot of it is just time. Give yourself lots of time. Be patient with yourself, because you're not going to rebuild your identity and rebuild your life overnight. That's not going to happen. It's going to take a long time. So just be prepared and give yourself a little grace and a little self-compassion, and give yourself time to grieve and to try new things that are within your limitations, that don't hurt you. And inevitably, I think you will find something that makes you happy. And if you can find that one thing, which I hope you do, just hang on to it real tight, because that'll be the thing that helps you get through your worst days. And that'll be the thing that helps you get through being in survival mode at all. And like I said, it's not perfect. There are days like, I'll be honest today, my survival mode and my symptoms are so bad that I feel pretty numb right now. I don't feel much of anything. I don't feel very present right now doing this, but, there will come a day, as sometimes it happens, where your symptoms will lighten up a little bit and you will be able to feel present for a minute, and you'll be able to enjoy the one thing that you hold on to dearly. That actually is our next segment, which is coping with survival mode. The first one is prioritizing rest and recovery. This might feel counterintuitive when you're trying to keep up, but rest isn't a luxury. Obviously, with us, it's a necessity. We require a lot of rest in order to function. So listen to your body and honor its need for downtime. And I'm not even gonna like expand on that because it just is what it is. Like, and I know that that's probably something that a lot of you guys already know is, you know, we have to prioritize our rest and recovery first and foremost. That's the most important thing. And unfortunately, with this one, it can lead to more isolation, but for the betterment of your quality of life and for the betterment of your health, it's something that is really important to do. I definitely struggle mentally. It's 50-50. I have days where I prioritize my rest and I'm like, I need this and this is good for me, and I'm just gonna let it be the day that it is, and I'm gonna make the best of it, and I'll get all cozy, I'll read a book, I'll watch Netflix, like I'll watch my favorite show, and it's just like, yes, I need this and this is something I have to do. And then there's days where it's heavy and like I know it's something I need to be doing, but and that goes with what we were saying before with like I just end up grieving the person that I was before. So it's not like prioritizing rest isn't easy by any means. People, and that's like a big misconception with healthy people too, is they automatically assume that you get cozied in bed and you're like, yes, this is the life. Yeah, I get to do absolutely nothing. Like, no, none of us feel that way. 90% of the time, I think we lay in bed and go, fuck, I don't want to be doing this right now. You know, that happens a lot. But it is 50-50 for me, whether or not I'm going to end up crying in bed because I'm upset that this is what I have to do and I would rather be doing other things, or I'm like, okay, you know what, we just got to accept that this is what it is and this is good for my body. Leaning on support, whether it's friends, family, or support groups, let others know what you're going through. You don't have to go through it alone. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, it's a step towards healing. And again, this is why I do what I do on here. And this is why I really, really am happy to be doing this podcast in general, because my vision with it in the first place, like, first and foremost, is I just want this to be a space where invisibly ill and disabled people can come in and find that support. And I just want you to see in the comments and whatever, and see that there are people out there who understand what you're going through. And just me speaking up about it and talking about my experiences as well. You know, I can only hope that through what I say and through what I talk about, that you guys feel less alone, and that you know that there's someone out there going through something similar, and that you can find support through this community, but you can also find support through me. I've said it before, if things are really bad and you really do feel really alone, obviously there's my Discord, but you know, I might not get back to you right away because my illness obviously makes it so I don't really, like, I'm very isolated because of my fatigue. I don't get to be around people super often, but eventually I will get to your DMs. So if you ever need someone, please feel free to hit me up, because you don't have to go through it alone. Number 3 is creating boundaries, which is a very, very hard one to do. And even when you create these boundaries, you know, sticking to those boundaries and like honoring it and respecting yourself enough to stick to your boundaries is really hard to do. Saying no can feel uncomfortable, but it's crucial. Boundaries protect your energy and help you prioritize what truly matters. And that's kind of like the grounding thought that I think you have to have when you set up those boundaries in the first place is, if you hear somebody say, like, for example, obviously a boundary of mine is I know I have my limitations, and if I know I'm having a bad day with my symptoms and it's something I feel like I can't handle, I'm going to say no to that. And I need people around me to respect me enough to understand that when I say no to doing something, that it's because I know I'm going to make my situation worse if I say yes. So if someone tries to make me feel guilty about it, and to where like they're trying to convince me to say yes, something you really have to just like you have to sit back and kind of sit with yourself for a minute and like have a talk with yourself and be like, okay, what is this person trying to do? They are trying to push past my boundary that I have set, and they're trying to convince me to do something that they know is going to be harmful for me. So in that moment, you can either respect yourself and respect your boundaries and go, no, like, this is going to be bad for me. I don't want to hurt myself here. I don't want to hurt my health. So no. Or you kind of end up playing the game of like, oh, but this, like, you're trying to make excuses, but like, oh, I don't want them to feel bad. And I feel like a lot of us, like, when we do ignore those boundaries, it's because we're probably people pleasers at heart. I know sometimes I can be a people pleaser, but yeah, creating boundaries for yourself is super important, and sticking to those boundaries is super important because they're there for a reason. They're there to help you. They're there to help protect, what very limited energy that you have, and they're there to help protect what minimal balance that you have in your life. So having some sort of grounding thought in that moment, or at least just finding the time to like be like, okay, I'm gonna step back from the situation, I'm gonna have a good talk with myself here, is really important. Number 4 is celebrating small wins. When you're in survival mode, even small achievements can feel monumental. Celebrate them, acknowledge your strength in getting through each day. I admittedly still struggle with that. I feel like personally something that I do that is kind of a toxic trait for myself is, I'll achieve something and I'll move past it so fast because I'm like, okay, what can I do now? You know what I mean? Like, I'm a very driven person at heart. So I'm always looking for the next thing to do. So when I do achieve something, no matter what it is, I'm very quick to be like, okay, what now? What now? Even if it's like I'm having a bad day and I just need today, it will be a win if I can get up and shower and do my laundry. And when I do those things, I just like totally disregard it. And the only time really I am like, I should acknowledge it is when Mr. Punkster is like, oh, I'm so proud of you. That must have been so hard, And I'm like, oh, you know what? Yeah, that was. It really was. Like, that was something that was hard for me to do today, and I did it, I'm very quick to just, like, move on and, still beat myself up and be like, oh, but I could have done this today. I'm not out here claiming to follow through with a lot of the things that we talk about because, again, like, I'm still someone who struggles, and I'm not a perfect person, and I'm not doing this podcast to say that I've learned everything and I know everything, because I'm just like you, I'm just figuring it out as I go. So I struggle with celebrating small wins. It is something that's really hard to do. The last and most important thing is to seek professional support. Therapists, counselors, or chronic illness coaches can provide tools to help navigate survival mode. They can help you shift from surviving to thriving, even if the path is gradual. So something that one of my big goals at some point is to eventually see some sort of chronic illness coach. But the one thing that I will say about this tip is sometimes, depending on where you live, whatever, it depends on your financial circumstances, unfortunately. I can't find any chronic illness coaches that wouldn't be without me paying out of my pocket. And so for me personally, a chronic illness coach isn't a viable option for me currently. But at some point I would love one. The reason I personally don't see therapists and counselors, and again, this is just a personal preference for me. I'm not trying to say that anyone should do this, because I'm sure regardless, like, it'll help your mental health in general. But for me, the reason I haven't personally gone to therapy or counseling is because I know that these people won't understand what it's like to live like this. In terms of like mental health problems that are not related to my chronic illness and disabilities, I actually have gone to counseling in the past. I've gone to therapy in the past, and I am pretty good now at acknowledging feelings and working through feelings, and I'm good in that sense. But when it comes to the complexities that come with being invisibly ill and disabled, and like the emotions that come with it and how complex it can be, and and how some of them there's not necessarily a solution for. I struggle so much with that. And so it would be nice to talk to someone who has gone to school and is literally, that's their job, is to help you work through those things, and they understand the complexities that come with it. So if I could see someone like that, that would be great. But unfortunately, it's not a financiable. Yeah, that's a word. That's not a financial option for me right now. It's not attainable. So, but I would love to see someone in the future. A lot of counselors and therapy, it's like mental health problems are still invisible illnesses. Let's be real. They are. And a lot of people don't see them as it is, but we're not like that. My personal experience, I will always be speaking about physical invisible illnesses and disabilities. But we did talk about that in the first episode, that mental health conditions are still invisible illnesses for sure. But I don't personally struggle with that, so I will always be speaking about my experience with physical invisible illnesses and disabilities. But so with therapists and counselors, they don't really understand the complexities that come with living with invisible illnesses and disabilities that are physical. Whereas these chronic illness coaches have trained for that. And some of them, actually, there are a lot of people who are chronically ill who end up going into that field because they want to help people, because they know how hard it is. And if I wasn't as sick as I was, if I wasn't homebound, I would honestly, like, before I started doing all of this and before my health got this bad, that was something that I was, like, I would have loved to do that. That was, like, I wanted to be, like, a chronic illness, like, health coach. That was, like, on my list of things. And then I got this sick and I have all of these limitations now, so it's just not possible for me. So this is the closest that I'm gonna get. I am not trained. I will never say that I know all things, and that I'm not trying to be a supplement of that help, but this is the closest that I can get to helping people. So this is the new goal. But I would have loved to be a chronic illness coach. That would have been a really cool job. So to end the podcast, I did want to end it with a call for compassion. We need to foster compassion both for ourselves and others. If you're living in survival mode, give yourself some grace. You're doing the best that you can, and that's enough. For those who aren't familiar with this experience, remember that someone's struggles aren't always visible, and that a little understanding can go a long way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. To anyone who wants to support the podcast, I do have a TikTok now, so if you want to go check out the podcast, its TikTok username is bedrot.podcast. I will be posting clips from the episodes, but I'm also going to be posting other chronic illness, invisible illness, and disability type content over there, so go make sure to check that out and give me a follow over there if you'd like. To anyone who's watching on YouTube, if you guys liked what you see, please give it a thumbs up, share the podcast episode, help reach more people, other people with chronic illnesses or invisible illnesses and disabilities. Also give it a share to help raise more awareness to invisible illnesses and disabilities, and hope that healthy people and abled people can come and learn more about us. Leave a comment down below if there's a specific topic that you would like me to cover. I do have a long list of topics that I will be discussing, but if there's anything in particular that you would like to see, please let me know. And yeah, I do episodes every other Tuesday here on Twitch, so please come give me a follow over on Twitch if you guys are finding this over on YouTube. My Twitch is Punkster with a V, PVNKSTER. And the next podcast episode is going to be... Let me check the calendar. The next podcast episode is going to be December 17th, and we're actually going to be doing a holiday-themed podcast episode where we're going to be discussing how to survive the holidays with invisible illness or disability, because the holiday season, I know for me personally, is very, very hard. So I'm going to try to, give you some tips and just discuss the holidays overall. So that'll be our next episode. That'll be on December 17th. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And I hope I get to see you guys soon.